The first bad review. Part 1. The review in the trades. The review ran in Variety on a Thursday morning. Chuck Norris read it at his desk in the Torrance dojo, where he had been since 5:30, the usual time, the usual session, the usual quality of early morning work that had been the constant of his life for 15 years. Paulie had left the trade publication on his desk, with the particular non-comment of leaving something without comment, just placed there, face up, folded to the relevant page. He picked it up. The reviewer's name was Hal Griffen. The review was 280 words. Chuck read it in 90 seconds and then put it face down on the desk and looked at the wall. The review was not enthusiastic. That was the neutral version of what it was. More accurately, it was the kind of writing produced by a person who has decided, before they sit down, that what they are reviewing is beneath the standard they maintain for what they review, and who has then given themselves the permission to be witty at the expense of accuracy. Griffen had called the film a competent stunt reel dressed in the loose-fitting clothes of a narrative. He had said that Mr. Norris occupies the screen with the authority of a furniture removal man who is also an expert in furniture removal, impressive within its specific category, but not a category that cinema has previously found urgent. He had said that the film would interest primarily those whose interest in cinema is subordinate to their interest in watching people be physically effective. He had not said that Chuck Norris could not act. He had implied it across 280 words without using the sentence, which was more precise and more damaging than the direct statement would have been. Chuck picked up the review and read it again. Then he put it down again. The film was Breaker, which had been released 2 weeks earlier. He had shot it in 6 weeks on a production budget that was modest in the way that polite language makes modest seem like a virtue rather than a constraint. He had given it everything he had, the full quality of his engagement, the skill he had been building across 3 years of acting classes and 1 film appearance, and the sustained effort of learning a medium he had not grown up in. He had believed, standing on that highway location at the end of the second day of shooting, that the thing that worked was working. Variety thought otherwise. He was 37 years old. He had been undefeated in competition for 6 years. He had been the world middleweight karate champion. He had trained 325 students to black belt and founded a federation and built something from a former laundromat that now occupied an 8,000 square foot building. He had done all of these things in specific and verifiable order through a specific and verifiable combination of discipline and work. The Variety review did not care about any of this. It cared about 280 words worth of opinion regarding a film that Chuck had made. He sat at his desk and thought about what to do with how he felt. Part 2. The classification problem. The first thing he did was classify the feeling correctly. This was a discipline he had developed over years of competition. The specific practice of identifying what a feeling actually was rather than what it looked like or what he expected it to be. In competition, correct classification of what you were feeling was the difference between a useful response and an escalating one. If you classified frustration as anger, you escalated. If you classified it correctly as frustration, the specific feeling of meeting a resistance that was not yielding to your current approach, you adjusted the approach. The feeling produced by the Variety review had several components. There was embarrassment. He identified this first because it was the most immediate, the specific quality of exposure that comes when something you have made is dismissed publicly in a medium read by the people in the industry you are trying to enter. The embarrassment was real, and its source was real. He had made a film, other people had seen the film, and now a professional evaluator had said in print that the film was not good in the specific way that he had intended it to be good. Underneath the embarrassment was something else. something he needed to look at directly to classify correctly. He sat at his desk and looked at it. It was not anger. He had expected anger, the martial artist's response, the fighter's response, the response of someone accustomed to having their competence challenged and who had spent 15 years answering challenges with the work that answered them. But the anger was not there. What was there instead was something quieter and less comfortable. It was uncertainty. He was uncertain whether the review was wrong, not about its tone. The tone was dismissive in a way that was designed to entertain rather than to inform, and Chuck had enough experience of the journalism of disparagement to understand the difference between an assessment and a performance of an assessment. But underneath the tone, Griffen had said something that was not necessarily inaccurate, that Chuck Norris occupied the screen with the authority of a specialist in a specific domain, and that the specific domain was not cinema in the broad cultural sense. Chuck thought about this carefully. He called Steve McQueen. Part 3. The Conversation with McQueen. McQueen picked up on the third ring. It was 7 in the morning, not an unusual hour for McQueen, who also had a relationship with the early morning that predated Chuck's knowledge of him. "I read the review," Chuck said. "I know," McQueen said. "I was going to call you." "What do you think?" A pause. The kind of pause that told Chuck that McQueen was deciding how honest to be, not about his opinion but about how to deliver it. McQueen's honesty was not in question. His judgment about the right form for honesty in specific circumstances was what produced his pauses. "I think Griffen is a professional contrarian who writes better than he sees. His track record on new talent is not good." "And the film," Chuck said. Another pause. "The film is what it is. It's a first film. First films are rarely the thing that the person who made them intended them to be, because the person who made them was learning to make films while they made it." He paused. "The question is what it tells you about what you need to do differently." "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Chuck said. "What does Bev say?" "Bev Morrison, the acting instructor. I haven't called her yet." "Call her," McQueen said. "She'll be less kind than I'm being, which is what you need." He paused. "And Chuck," Griffen said, "you're a specialist in a specific domain." He meant it as a criticism. "I would evaluate it differently. You are a specialist in a specific domain. The question is whether the domain you're a specialist in translates to film in the way you need it to." "That's a craft question, not a talent question." "There's a difference," Chuck said. "Craft is learnable," McQueen said. "You've been learning craft for 3 years. The review is one data point in that learning process, one professional's assessment of your current state of development." He paused. "It does not define the process." Chuck was quiet for a moment. "What did you think of the film?" he said. A shorter pause this time. "I thought the fight sequences were authentic in a way that Hollywood fight sequences rarely are," McQueen said. "I thought the scenes between the fights were variable. Some of them you were in, some of them you were moving through." He paused. "You know the difference. You've talked about it." "Yes," Chuck said. "Griffen didn't know the difference," McQueen said. "He saw variable and called it insufficient. What it actually is a ratio that needs to adjust. You need more of the being in and less of the moving through." Part 4. Bev Morrison. He called Bev Morrison after lunch. She had seen the film the previous week. He had told her it was opening, and she had said she would see it and offer her thoughts, which was her habit with students who were working. She had not called, which he had interpreted as ambiguous. In his experience, silence from Bev after she had seen your work meant either that she had nothing significant to add or that she had something significant to say and was waiting for you to ask. "Tell me," he said. She did not soften the beginning. "The review is not wrong," she said. "It's not right in its tone and it's not right in some of its specific characterizations, but the core observation that your performance is inconsistent in ways that are related to how present you are in the scene versus how present you are to the scene, that's not inaccurate." "Explain the distinction," Chuck said. Being present in a scene means you're inside it, you're receiving what's happening, you're responding to what's actually there, you're inhabiting the moment rather than executing it. We've talked about this. She paused. Being present to a scene means you're managing it from the outside. You're aware of the camera, you're tracking whether you're hitting your marks. You're executing the technical requirements rather than living inside the experience. I know, Chuck said. In the fight sequences, you're present in the scene, she said, because the fight sequences are something you've done 10,000 times in conditions that demanded genuine presence rather than managed presence. The physical intelligence you have, the reading, the response, the quality of being in the actual moment rather than the predicted moment, that's fully operational in the fights. She paused. In the dialogue scenes, you're present to the scene about 60% of the time. The other 40%, something shifts. You become aware of being watched rather than aware of what's happening. Why the fights and not the dialogue? Chuck said. Because in a fight, the consequence of not being present is immediate and physical and undeniable, she said. You've spent 15 years training your nervous system to be fully in a martial encounter, because not being fully in it costs you immediately and concretely. She paused. In a dialogue scene, there's no immediate consequence of not being present. You can say the lines correctly without being in the scene, and no one will hit you for it. Your nervous system hasn't been trained to recognize the inadequacy of that. She paused again. This is fixable. It's a training problem, not an ability problem. Chuck sat with this. The distinction between ability and training was one he had applied to students for 15 years. Receiving it in relation to his own work required a specific quality of openness that he was not certain he had. What's the training? He said. More sessions, she said, but different ones. I want to work specifically on the dialogue scenes, not the text, not the technique, but the conditions under which you lose presence, understanding the triggers, building a different relationship with the camera. She paused. The camera is the thing that's different from the dojo. In the dojo, the mirror doesn't intimidate you. You've been looking at yourself in the mirror for 15 years, and you've learned to use the information it provides rather than to perform for it. You need to develop the same relationship with the camera. How long? Chuck said. Months, she said. Not years. You have the foundation. We're adjusting a specific element. Part 5. The question he asked himself. He taught the evening classes. He ran the 5 o'clock session the following morning. He did what the schedule required, which was the structure his life had been built around. The schedule held things that were difficult, provided a form for days that might otherwise have no form, required the body and mind to be in specific places at specific times, regardless of what the emotional environment was suggesting. But in the margins of the schedule, the drive between the house and the dojo, the 10 minutes before the morning session, the brief pauses in the administrative afternoon, he was thinking about the review and what it had told him, not about Griffen's opinion, about his own. He had a practice, developed over 15 years of competition and teaching, of examining his performance, not from the outside, not from the position of evaluator, critic, external judge, but from the inside. The question he asked himself after a competition was not, was I good, but was I accurate? The distinction mattered because good was a relational term that depended on the observer and the standard and the context, while accurate was an absolute term that asked only whether the thing you did corresponded to what the situation actually required. He asked himself the accurate question about Breaker. He had been accurate in the fight sequences. This was not pride. It was the same quality of unsentimental self-assessment that he had applied to his losses in competition, the specific ability to see what had and hadn't worked without filtering the assessment through either deflation or inflation. In the fights, he had been doing something he knew how to do, and he had done it as well as the conditions allowed, and the product was accurate. In some of the dialogue scenes, he had been accurate. in others, and he could identify which ones because they corresponded to the sessions Bev had described as moving through rather than being in. He had not been accurate. He had been technically correct. He had said the words in the right order, in the right timing, with the right physicality. But he had not been in the scene. He had been present to it, in Bev's distinction. Griffen's review had been 280 words of dismissal that contained, embedded in its performance of cleverness, a core observation that was not wrong. Chuck could hold this simultaneously with the knowledge that Griffen's tone was unfair and that Griffen's assessment of his career potential was not within Griffen's competence. The unfairness of the dismissal and the accuracy of the embedded observation were not contradictory. They were just two separate things. He had lost 10 fights before he won. Those losses had been accurate assessments of his state of development at the time. They had been painful and instructive in the way that accurate assessments of your state of development are always painful and instructive. He had used them as information and had done the specific work they indicated was needed. The variety review was a loss. He classified it correctly. Part 6. The work that followed. He went back to Bev Morrison's studio 3 times a week for 4 months. The work was different from the earlier sessions, more specific, more targeted, more uncomfortable in the way that work becomes more uncomfortable as it gets closer to the actual problem. The earlier sessions had been foundational, establishing the principle of genuine presence, developing the ability to distinguish being in from being present to, building the initial capacity. The new sessions were remedial in the precise sense. They were addressing a specific identified weakness in an otherwise functional system. Bev had been right about the camera. His relationship with it was different from his relationship with the mirror in the dojo. The mirror provided information, the camera felt like an assessor, and the feeling of being assessed activated in him a slight quality of management that was precisely the thing that worked against genuine presence. He could see it in himself when Bev played back the video, and seeing it clearly was the first step toward changing it. He developed, over 4 months, a practice for the camera, a specific routine he ran before the camera was switched on, a quality of deliberate presence to his own body and breath that he had adapted from the pre-match routine he had developed in competition years earlier. He had discovered through Bev's work that the same principles applied. The pre-match routine was about arriving fully in the present moment before the contest began. The pre-camera routine was about arriving fully in the present moment before the scene began. The mechanism was identical. Good Guys Wear Black was shot in the spring of 1977, 1 year after Breaker. Breaker had received its review in Variety. Chuck brought everything the intervening year had produced to the work. The film made $18 million on a $1 million budget. The reviews were not unanimous. Several critics repeated variants of Griffen's argument. Others, including notably a review in the Los Angeles Times, said something different, that Norris was developing in real and visible ways, that the performance was more consistent than his first film, that there was something in his on-screen presence that didn't fit the conventions of the genre, but that worked on its own terms. Chuck read the Los Angeles Times review and the negative ones and assessed all of them with the same quality of unsentimental attention. Some were accurate, some were not. Some contained both accurate and inaccurate elements in specific proportions. He kept the Griffen review. He kept it in the desk drawer of the dojo office, under the utility bills and the enrollment forms and the composition notebook that held the early formulations of Junkuk-do. He kept it because it was the record of a loss, the first loss in a new domain, the first failure in a medium he had decided to take seriously, the first external assessment that corresponded to an internal truth he had been working toward. He had learned over 15 years of the other thing, that what you do with a loss defines you more than the loss itself. He had done with this one what he had done with the 10. He showed up the next day and did the work. O Year Prologue, The Year of the Numbers. Good Guys Wear Black was released in January 1978. By June, it had earned $18 million against its $1 million production budget. By the end of the year, it had been seen by audiences in markets that the independent distribution network reached, which was not every market but was enough of them. Hal Griffen did not review Good Guys Wear Black. This was not, Chuck understood, a significant development in either direction. Critics reviewed what they were assigned to review, and the assignment decisions at Variety were made by editors with their own criteria. What was significant was the specific quality of the letters Chuck received in the months after the film's release. Not fan mail. He was accustomed to fan mail in the martial arts context and understood its specific relationship to the work it was responding to. These were different. Letters from people who had seen the film and who said, with varying degrees of articulacy, that watching it had made them feel something they had not expected to feel in an action film. Something about the character, something about the way the character occupied his own body and his own circumstances, something that corresponded to what they understood about their own experience of being in difficult situations. He read these letters in the same way he read everything, with the honest attention of someone who was looking for accurate information about the effect of the work. They were accurate information. The effect was real. It had been produced by the work he had done in the 4 months after the Variety review, the work that Bev Morrison had described as remedial and that had felt at the time like the most difficult thing he had done since the early losses in competition. The work had been right. The loss had been accurate. The year between the first film and the second had produced something that the second film's audience could feel. That was the sequence. It was always the same sequence. He drove to the dojo in the dark and taught the 5 o'clock session and the 8 and the 10, and in the afternoon he met with Bev for one final session. Not remedial, she said, but maintenance, and drove home for dinner with Diane and the boys, and the day was what it was, which was ordinary and specific and exactly enough.